Now I'll plunge into the subject. The COVID is unprecedented, and it came from the unannounced. It was a bolt from the blue. None of this generation had ever thought about such a disease, an epidemic of this proportion. I believe about 200 years ago, there was a plague which wiped out 10 or 15% of the humanity, etc. But it didn't really register us. Never ever the world has stunned of this magnitude. Fortunately for us, uh, even in the year 1897, there was an enactment called Epidemic Disease Act, which dealt with this situation. And in 2005, the Disaster Management Act was passed to give greater power to the administration to deal with epidemic of this nature. Now, would have thought in a matter of 1.5 decades, we had to implement this act, and it's a big challenge. I'm sure the Indian industry will come out of it. Now, I have segregated this program into 6 parts. One is a brief note on the Disaster Management Act as well as the Epidemic Act. We will leave Epidemic Act immediately now. Then the second is what is the industry law on the subject. The third is what is the stand of the management and the workman in this situation. Fourth is what is the process of law which is taking place in this country and how it is likely to move on. These are the 4 legal issues. Fifth is I'm not an expert on HR. You are all there. But by my experience, by interacting with HR persons, I have some thought process to share with you. That is, I put it on the heading resolving the conflict. And finally, a number of questions which I have come across in the earlier seminars or what I read, etc. I posed it as common questions and I have answered them. By now, all of you would be definitely have a fair idea on the legal aspects of the present situation, because you would have heard quite a few speakers on this issue, and you would have read quite a few articles on this issue, opinions of experts, etc. So you are already well equipped and you are well informed. On that basis, I'll proceed. I'll give a fair idea as to, in my experience, how we can deal with this unprecedented situation in a legal manner. That's my purpose. I'll take up this Disaster Management Act immediately. I must tell you in the very beginning, this is a very powerful enactment in the sense the provisions of the act are mandatory in nature. It's not a general enactment, it's a very special enactment. And the important definition is what is meant by disaster management. That will give a fair idea how to deal with the labor laws also in conjecture with this enactment. It is defined, disaster management means a continuous and integrated process of planning, organizing, coordinating, implementing measures which are necessary or expedient for prevention of danger of threat of any disease, etc. See, such a wide power has been given describing what is disaster management. Immediately thereafter, we can move on to only a few more sections which deals how to implement this enactment. Under chapter 2, there is a National Disaster Management Authority to implement the provisions of this act. And chapter 10, 6 and 10 give the widest power of the authorities to proceed with the implementation of this act. Under section 14, 18, and 25, you will file a decentralization. At the national level, Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman, and at the state level, the chief minister, and district level, the collector. This is how the power spreads to implement the provisions of this enactment. And very important provision is section 72, which says that the provisions of this act would have effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent in any other law for the time being in force. So this act is a very predominant act. Any other law before 2005 or after 2005, which deals with certain provisions which are inconsistent to this act, will have to give way away. And this act will prevail even impliedly and expressly also. So this is the importance of this act. And section 51 is also equally important to show the power of the act that imposes punishment of fine or 1 year imprisonment for not obeying the orders without reasonable cause. And if the disobedience results in loss of life or imminent danger, the punishment is only imprisonment, which may go up to 2 years. So the focus is this act is a very important piece of legislation. It is mandatory in nature. By inference, it is a special act. There is nothing defined as special act, general act, but in the situations it will change. I'll deal with the case law on that a bit later. Now, this is the act which is now prevailing in the entire country, including the state of Tamil Nadu. Now, where does the industry stand on that? We are very familiar with the industrial law, and we are conversant. Now, at least for the present situation, three enactments have a role to play. That is Industrial Disputes Act, then Industrial Standing Orders Act, and also Payment of Wages Act. Why three's enactment is it's got a direct bearing. That's why I'm referring to it. Industrial Disputes Act, we will straight away, without much ado, go into the relevant section, which is dealing with the layoff. That's what we are all asking or concerned about it. Because we are not saying it's a lockout or a retrenchment or closure. We are all saying it's a layoff in some form or other. So 2 K defines layoff. 25C provides for layoff compensation. And the next section is 25M, which deals with the permission to lay off the workman in respect of an establishment which is having 100 or more workmen on a preceding 12 months average day. And in that, one exception is if the layoff is due to natural calamity, permission is not necessary. So definition 25C and 25M. Definition includes natural calamity. 25M also includes natural calamity. So whether the present situation is a natural calamity is what we are going to see immediately. Then I will deal with the Industrial Standing Orders Act immediately, because we should not be under the impression merely because there is a definition and there is a provision under 25C as to the compensation payable, we have power to lay off. No, it's not so. The definition is only a projection of law. 25C deals with the compensation. 25M deals with the permission. But what is very important is you must have the power to lay off your workman. The power to lay off workmen is not available under the Industrial Disputes Act. The power to lay off is available under the provisions of the Standing Orders Act. If you have a certificate standing order which empowers you to lay off your workman and it is given on certain grounds, you have to stick to those grounds. Or if you are not having a certificate standing order, you have to go to the model standing orders. Model standing orders provides for layoff, very importantly, for the reason of epidemic. So for epidemic, if you're following model standing orders, you can lay off your workman. Theoretically. And if your standing order provides for it, yes, you can do it. If you are not following model and you have a standing order which does not provide for power to lay off due to epidemic, your power is simply vanishes in thin air. This is the first point I want to focus. That's why I want to bring in standing orders. The next enactment we have to keep in mind in the present context is the Payment of Wages Act. Payment of Wages Act defines salary, which is payment earned by an employee during employment for work done, etc., etc. It's very clear. And the legal deductions are provided under Section 7 towards cooperative association, LIC, premium, loans, etc., etc., and also fines under Section 8. Anything contrary to these two provisions would amount to illegal deduction. If it's an illegal deduction, the employees have a right to approach the authority, provided the employee is receiving salary less than 24,000 rupees. And if he moves an application before the authority, he has got the power to inquire into the matter and order it. But importantly, he has got a power to impose fine up to 10 times the amount claimed. There is also prosecution, no doubt it's only fine. If an employee is out of Payment of Wages Act because his salary is more than 24,000 rupees per month, he can move an application before the labor court claiming wages, etc. So if he is not even a workman, he is a manager or a supervisor outside the scope of definition of Section 2S of the IDA Act, the remedy is a bit cumbersome. He has to go to the civil claim it. I'll deal with it while I'm saying this. So these two enactments, along with Regulation and Abolition Act, this I'm referring because certain questions have been posed on that. Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act is, it is a legal document for employment of contract labor pursuant to your registration certificate, which gives the names of the contractors and the nature of work. And the contractor has to take a license if he is employing 20 or more. But what is a crucial aspect of this act is Section 21. It says if the contractor fails to pay wages to his workman, then the principal employer should make the payment and recover it from the contractor as a debt or any other amount which he can withhold. So this is a broad spectrum of Disaster Management Act and also the Labor Act. Now, since 24th April till date, we are on lockdown. And today's newspapers show that the industry has taken a baby step towards running its establishment. Probably in another 1 year, it should be back on its foot. Now, the immediate issue which arises for consideration, which we have to resolve by 7th May, if you are an industry having less than 1,000 workmen, and by 10th May, if you are an industry having more than 1,000 workmen, your salary has to be paid. Now, it is so obvious employers are not able to pay salary. Undoubtedly, the situation is not very rosy on that. It's far away from it. For example, because of recession in automobile industry well before this epidemic, it had a spiraling effect, or there was a reaction in all engineering industries, hoping that by April it will survive. But April had to be entirely anticlimax. So that the employees don't have money is so obvious and it is so well known. On the other hand, the workmen say, we want our salary. Now, I want to address this legal conflict, not by giving any decision on this. Let us see what is the legal foundation for the workman as well as the management. As I could read certain opinions and also the speech of Indira Jaising, who is appearing for the workman in the Supreme Court, and also Mr. Jamshedji Kama, who gave an interview because he is spearheading the litigation of the management before the Supreme Court. Now, in this context, there are two orders passed by the central government. One is dated 24th March, which virtually says that all industries should close except to two type of industries, and also that state government's order dated 23rd March, which says all industries should close except 7 industries. So you have been asked to close. Now this power is so important that we have no other go except to close. The next important document is the order of the central government dated 29th March. In class 3, it says all employers, be it in industry or in shop and commercial establishment, shall make payment of wages to their workmen at their workplace on the date without any deduction for the period of their establishment under. So on the one hand, you have been asked to close. On the other hand, you have been asked to make full payment. There is interpretation whether this order would apply to the regular workman or migrant workman, because the beginning of the paragraph starts with the migrant workman. There is also a debate whether these orders would really have an impact on the managements. So let us see the case of the management is that the Disaster Management Act is silent in respect of industrial law. This is the first point they are saying. They say disaster management is for the state to implement certain aspects so that the disaster does not spread and they contain it. The second argument is the Disaster Management Act does not deal with the amount of passed under Disaster Management Act. Giving such directions is beyond the scope of the act is the second argument. The third argument is they say the closure, not the closure as defined under the Industrial Disputes Act, because in the loosely used term in the government orders, they say this closure or whatever name it's called, suspension of work, etc., is not an. I'm sorry. You can interrupt anytime and tell me. The third most important argument for the management is that closure is not our instance, at our instance, nor we have acted on that. So we are not responsible to pay wages. Fourth is there is no denial of work to the workman by the management. So they say disaster management as per se has no application. These orders are beyond the scope of labor legislation. And it ends by saying the denial of work is not by management. See, the management can deny workman work, not non-employment work, by declaring a lockout or by layoff. So all the management has said we have not done either of that, and therefore we are not liable to pay wages. Certain other legal issues are there. Article 14, 21, 29, etc., etc. is also being projected. So the case of the management is I have not done anything to close the industry or suspend my operations. Therefore, I'm not liable to pay this. Let us see the case of the workman, because we should have some idea how they project it. They say that the Disaster Management Act, I'll deal with it elaborately probably when I deal with the Supreme Court and High Court cases. This is the Disaster Management Act is a legal regime which is in operation in India. Therefore, they say virtually the provisions of the labor enactment should subsist or it should lie down or it is inoperative. That's exactly what Indira Jaising says. She says that's exactly what Indira Jaising says. She says two legal regimes cannot operate at a time. One Disaster Management Act and an Industrial Act. Therefore, she says, pursuant to Section 72, which shows predominance of the Disaster Management Act in all aspects, it says the provisions of the disaster management are predominant, and therefore orders passed in that would include wages for the workman by implication. And they also say the provisions of the labor enactment should be inoperative during this period. Then they also say the amendments are not what was our positive ground they are putting against us. The amendments are not even assuming that they have power, and in spite of the disaster management, they can operate independently in terms of the labor enactments. None of the amendments have declared layoff. So we are entitled for full wages. That they also say an important argument, which is very appealing, is how can we be denied wages? On the one hand, the government by order says you should not leave home. Secondly, the factories are closed. So where is the workman at fault? I have to sit at home and you are also closed. So I am not at fault. I am entitled for full wages. And next formidable argument they are posing is, when can a workman be denied wages? On the principle of no work, no pay, which we all popularly aware of it. One, when he is absent from work. Number two, when he is on strike. Or number three, to the extent the wages can be deducted strictly in accordance with the provisions of the Payment of Wages Act. Therefore, their argument is Disaster Management Act will hold the field. Industrial law will have to give way, assuming that both act together, both the acts operate together under the provisions of the very Industrial Disputes Act and Payment of Wages Act. They say you are entitled for wages. This is the legal conflict broadly projected by both sides, as I could understand. Now I'll move to the fourth aspect. Okay. Now the proceedings before the Supreme Court on 27/4, wherein the Maimon could not get any relief, an interim relief, is a big letdown. It's a big setback. Therefore, all other high courts or any other high court will be reluctant to give any interim order to the Maimon. Supreme Court, the Maimon challenged the order of the central government dated 29/3, which directed payment of wages without any deduction. Therefore, that was a big setback. Now, the next order which I want to refer to it, as you are all aware, the interim order, a positive order, passed by the Aurangabad bench of the Bombay High Court. There also the challenge was to the order of the government dated 29/3. Now, this order resulted in this litigation resulted in a fiasco, rather, really. In spite of the genuine offer of the management, we will pay 50% of the lost drawn wages to the workman, or we will pay minimum wages, whichever is higher. I think it's a very fair offer to get an interim order, because normally we advocates know for denial of wages you will not get an interim order. Therefore, we have to make some genuine offer to win over the sympathy of the court or win over its heart. But even this didn't work. They referred to it, but they declined to grant any interim order because Supreme Court did not grant interim order in respect of the very same matter. Now, the Bombay High Court also took note of an important development where the Kerala High Court stayed the Kerala government's order, which deferred the salary of government employees by 6 days each month for 5 months. That is, ultimately 30 days wages will be deferred from April to August. That order of the Kerala state government was also stayed. I'll read it immediately thereafter. So these two proceedings, one before the Supreme Court, another decision by the Kerala High Court, tilted the case against the management very badly. And as you all know, once you don't get an interim order, there is very likelihood of not getting it at all till its final disposition, which may take some time, at least urgently. Otherwise, urgently it is heard. Now, to rub the salt on the wound, the Bombay High Court has also said this, that we expect the petitioner to pay gross monthly wages to these employees, save and accept conveyance allowance and food allowance. So probably in Aurangabad or in Maharashtra, the payment of food allowance and conveyance allowance would have been subject to the workman reporting for work. So they say virtually accept contingent payment, you must pay all the payments. For example, to my knowledge in India, at least in Tamil Nadu, the contingent payments could be attendance bonus, or production bonus incentive, which is based on actual performance or presence, or night shift allowance, overtime allowance, etc., etc. So other than that, entire amount should be paid is the Bombay bench order. Now I want to refer to uh, Supreme Kerala order for the simple reason. Kerala government, as you know, was had taken up immediate measures on COVID because the first person to suffer positive was in Kerala. So Kerala, by now, it's so familiar with the disasters because of floods and very many diseases. They have all their equipments ready, infrastructure ready, and they're well experienced by now. So the Kerala government immediately swung into action to contain the epidemic. And Kerala government was the first government to come out with liberal monetary benefits to its citizens, including the working class, etc. So they had spent a lot of money even before the central government could react and announce some packages of 1,000 rupees per month to its certain segment of the country's citizens. So Kerala government is virtually dry, and therefore they passed an administrative order by which I'll read that administrative order. The government employees who are in receipt of a gross salary of about 20,000 shall be subject to a deferment of small portion of the salary. The said deferment is on the salary payable for the period April 2020 till August 2020. The quantum of salary proposed to be deferred under this order is the salary equivalent to 6 days for each of the aforesaid months. Thus, by the end of 5 months, the deferment of salary 1 month due to the government employees will be withheld. This is the order which was challenged. And this order is dated 23/4/2020. Now let's see critical observations of the Kerala High Court after hearing the petitioners and also the Advocate General for the state of Kerala. Para 16 and few lines in para 17 and 18 I'll read. Payment of salary to an employee is certainly not a matter of bounty. Very strong expression. It is a right vested in every individual to receive salary. It gives a lot of impact on the pending litigation or whatever our thought process is. And it gives a boost to the employee's claim. Then it says, after referring to two Supreme Court judgments, if the right to receive a sum of money is a property right, is very crucial, of any person, withholding it without an authority under law does not need elaborate consideration to hold that the salary of any portion cannot be withheld, deferred, or denied by the state government without authority of law. In fact, state government passed an administrative order with an authority on law. Still, they say under the Disaster Management Act, especially 38-39, you have no power to pass such an order. Now, next is very crucial. Article 300A of the Constitution of India, which covers constitutional right of property to an individual citizen, will include within its purview salary also as a property right at this prima facie. So this is another strong view expressed by the Kerala Court. Therefore, they said there cannot be a denial of right to salary without any authority of law, and there is no such authority of law in the country today. And it's also a constitutional right given under Article 300A of Constitution of India. Therefore, they said we cannot countenance the submission of the government that it has got power to delay the disbursement of salary by few months by an executive order. This order has been passed in spite of paying encomium to the government of Kerala in the earlier paragraphs. So this gives a fair idea what I call as a trend, as an election trend. The beginning few rounds will be determinative unless there is a surprise later on. The trend shows the employers do not stand to have much of a case before the judiciary. And one important argument which I want to refer now and not earlier is what is a principle called as interpretation of statutes. While interpreting a statute, in labor jurisprudence, it has been well settled that if there is a doubt on interpretation, the favor should be only for the working class. This is well settled by the Supreme Court in Greaves Cotton case way back. So if there is an interpretation in respect of the Disaster Management Act vis-a-vis the labor enactments, the interpretation should be in favor of the working class, unless such an interpretation leads to absurdity or it will result in violence to the language of a statute or order. This is one aspect. Second important aspect which the working class is going to project before the Supreme Court is that the Disaster Management Act is a special act, and whereas industrial law is a general act. And the law is well settled. A special act will prevail in the circumstances. As I said in the beginning itself, there is no stamp of special status to an enactment or a general status to an enactment. What is special or general has been well enunciated by the Supreme Court, the landmark case of LIC versus Bahadur in the year 1980. The judgment given by Justice Krishna Iyer would tilt the balance, in my view, in favor of the workman in the present litigation. Justice Krishna Iyer in the beginning itself says, it has taken him 1 year to write this judgment. He also gives reasons because it's a virgin field and he had to have consultation with his two brother judges, and he explained it took 1 year for him to write this judgment. Who is a jurist who is familiar with human rights and labor jurisprudence. In para 39 and 40, he deals with what is this special law and general law. In that case, briefly I'll tell you so that you can catch the point. The LIC, before its nationalization, its various other companies had a settlement with the workman for payment of bonus at a particular percentage. After its merger and it became LIC, those settlements continued to operate, importantly. Then LIC regulations were framed by which this profit sharing bonus was rejected, and it was at a lesser percentage. So LIC said we will pay payment only based on a LIC Act, which is the enactment which deals with the service conditions of the workman. Perfect. But Justice Krishna gave a spin or a twist saying, in the present context, LIC Act is a general act which deals with only service conditions, whereas Industrial Disputes Act is a special act which deals with settlement which has already taken place. And he says special enactment is applicable in a war zone situation. War zone situation. See how relevant it today. He said it's a war zone enactment. And he also says an act should be read as a special enactment based on the prevailing circumstances and also the context. If you now know this epidemic is a war zone situation and it refers to a particular circumstances in a special context, I think the Disaster Management Act would be held to be a special enactment. I am afraid so. But as you all know, let's wait for what the Supreme Court is going to do. So this is where we stand legally. Now, last but one topic which I'm going to deal with is, so I have covered the Disaster Management Act, Industrial Disputes Act. I covered the legal conflict between the two parties. I also briefly dealt with the pending litigation before Supreme Court and Bombay High Court and what has happened in Kerala High Court. Therefore, now, without waiting for any decision by the courts, we have to start moving forward. Within few days, probably we will start working. Now, I got about a few points to share with you based on my experience in this field of litigation, and also based on my experience with professionals like you, and also my interaction with well-informed trade union leaders. Uh, Now, the most disturbing news which is coming in media in the last 2 days is the unrest by migrant workmen or guest workmen or contract workmen, whatever you say. Those workmen were not allowed to leave the state or the place. And very unfortunately, the employers simply disowned them, except a few. So they were virtually at a starvation. So initially, they were not having strength to fight it. They are only begging for their food. Now they have turned violent. Even in Chennai, there is a police action against them. And all over India, they have turned violent. Why? Because simply they don't have wages, nor they have anything to eat, nor they have place to shelter. Uh, I fear, I genuinely fear that once the industry starts opening and takes a baby step to run the industry, if the workmen are required to come to work without salary, it is a clear indication of an industrial unrest in the making. That's my first indication. I find, uh, very unfortunately, neither state government nor the central government is not coming forward to take any proactive steps in this regard. The state government is busy with containing the virus, which was 50 per day, and now it has become 100, 100 to 200, it has become 500. So they are themselves are grappling with the epidemic situation, which is going clearly out of hand. So we don't expect the government to mediate in this, which I thought will take place after a few days at least. No, it's not going to take place. Nor the trade unions are willing to tell the workman. On the contrary, they already made a demand that the workman should be paid wages. So this is where the current industrial situation, it's really a testing time for IR professionals and HR professionals. How they are going to save the industry from any industrial unrest will be a challenging task, and it will be an historic occasion. You will be judged by the next generation. How you handle this industrial situation is my respectful view. Now, uh, I, as a lawyer, would always advise my clients: don't arrange your affairs based on my legal knowledge or my capacity to win a case, nor you expect a favorable order from the court. It's a last resort. If you fail everywhere, then only you litigate. Therefore, what I felt that I should share with this elite audience is that you have to move forward in a proactive manner. I had a interaction with five or six, exactly six trade union leaders whom I know very well. Not real professional trade union leaders. I don't disrespect them. I'm only saying that trade union leaders with a legal background on labor law. I posed them two questions. Do you insist on salary to the workman when they report for work, or you are going to give up something, or you will take one third now, one third towards leave salary, one towards advance, bonus, etc., and report for work? All of them said emphatic no. We will not be able to tell our workmen that you receive lesser salary, etc. That's simply out of question. Number two, I said, this I want you to ponder. Are you ready to make good the last working days in respect of these 6 weeks, forgetting about six weekly holidays and some festival holiday if it come? So roughly about 30 to 35 days, 5-day work or 6 days. are the workmen ready to work again without any further salary? Because if you want salary, then you have to work. Now that the period is gone. Are you ready to compensate it by working in a 5-day company, 6-day, in a 6-day company, 6.5 day, or weekly, every day 1 hour, or weekly 1 day, etc., subject to the exemption or permission available under the provisions of the Factories Act? Mind you, no one said no. No one said no. The answer was only two. One is, we'll think about it. Two is, yes, we will consider it. So I think the best solution to this COVID related issue is to negotiate and arrive at a settlement. Now, how I arrive at a settlement is a well-known process. Now, it is permissible under industrial law to enter into a settlement during the pendency of settlement also. There is nothing impediment on that. You can enter into another settlement or MOU, etc., as to how you would arrange your affairs. Probably if you are a sick company, you may not be in a position to pay the full salary. So it's obvious how you bargain on that. If you're a reasonably good, financially sound company, how you are going to organize it. Now, I feel that we should immediately take up that process without waiting for what's happening in Supreme Court, because some HR professionals has told me, sir, can we say the matter is sub judice, and therefore we will pay salary only. There's no legal meaning at all. There's no legal context at all. It's all commonly used. Sub judice, pending before. It does not matter at all. Even if you have a stay, the workmen are insisting on wages. That is the situation now. So let's not wait for any decision from any court of law. You will negotiate with the workman and arrive at a settlement in various methods. Immediately, how to resolve the salary, how to get back the work done, or after opening, what is the type of workman will enter the factory first, a regular workman or value added workman, a non-value workman, second stage, a contract workman, the third stage, etc. And this period can be by of an agreement, so that it will be less than, it's only around 50% of the wages, because the provisions of the IDA Act provides for an agreement by way of a layoff also. Thirdly, in the pending settlements, how much can be deferred? If you already entered into settlement for bonus at 18% or 20%, how much can be deferred? And also the increments which come by of a settlement, whether it can be deferred. Now, canteen, how much expenses we can reduce? What are the wasteful expenses you can reduce? Is how you can go forward and resolve the issue. Is my uh, view on this, because of the uncertainty in the litigation. So these are the 5 aspects I want to cover. Now, I have been posed with a number of questions on this issue of lockdown, which says uh, in about last week seminar, I received about nearly 200 questions. So that gave me a fair idea of what is the doubts in the mind of the HR professionals, IR professionals. I would consolidate it into 8 or 9 questions and I'll answer it right now. I'll pose a question and answer. Beyond that, if you have any questions, I am ready to answer. See, the first question is so obvious, whether the workman should be paid full salary. For the time being, I have to say yes, because there is no relief in favor of the amendment as of now before any court of law. Therefore, I have to say legally yes. But I would also suggest that if there is no settlement, etc., you make the salary with a caveat or with a reservation saying this is being paid subject to any decision of the court or any judicial order or any government order. So that's the best way you can look at it. The second one is, frequently asked question is, whether lesser salary or lesser percentage of salary can be paid. The answer is no. because Section 23 of the Payment of Wages Act bars contracting workmen, by which a workman's salary can be reduced even by of an agreement. So this is the legal question in respect of workman with salary less than 24,000. What about others? I am saying still the principle will apply. In common law, there cannot be a contract to be determined apart from what is in existence. It cannot be done. So lesser salary is legally out of question. Third is yes, whether the leave period can be adjusted. Uh, Principally and legally, no, because leave is right to the workman to be used for his social reasonings, like casually earned leave or for various reasons. The present situation where the workman is asked to sit at home with a fear whether he will be affected by coronavirus, he will turn positive, is not a leave really he has enjoyed. He is at home. But a small gate available is you can enter into, or the workman can give a letter of consent by which he can say, yes, on these days I'm ready to credit these days as a leave, and my leave encashment can be entertained on that. If they agrees voluntarily, you come out of Section 23 also. 4 is frequently asked question, whether the contract laborer are entitled for wages. My answer is yes, for these two reasons. Section 2L of the Factories Act defines a worker, which includes contract workmen. So whoever is on the muster roll, your direct workman or contract workman, are entitled for wages. That begs the question, who should pay the wages? Obviously, it is the contractor who should pay wages to the contract workman, not the principal employer. Because the work done, you make the payment. Now, it is a situation where the contract workmen have not reported for work. They are not in your premises. Therefore, technically, you can say the contractor, I won't pay any wages. I won't clear your bill, nor you can raise any invoice at all. So let's see the next consequences. The contractor does not pay wages to his workman. As far as the contract workman is concerned, the contractor is an employer. So the employer does not pay wages to the workman. So what is the next legal option available to them? They can file a petition before the Payment Authority or a labor court, in which the principal employer will be definitely added upon. This is where Section 21 will come into play. Section 21 makes it clear the contractor must pay, failing which the principal employer should pay and record it from the contractor. So whichever way look at it, ultimately, the principal employer will be liable to pay the wages for the contract workman also. The fifth question is whether the central government orders ought to be implemented. A very blunt question I have been asked. Our emphatic answer is yes. Whether it has got anything to do with our industrial relations on wages, etc., etc. By asking this question, what is it is inferred? The central government is asked to close. If you are not closing it, then you suffer the punishment under Section 51 of the Act. So the situation is practically over because we all obeyed it. No one has taken the risk of disobeying it. Then the sixth question is, what is the position of loss-making company? A very relevant question, but the answer in law is nothing. I can't say you have a better case, etc. Let us take a simple situation. Don't forget about COVID. You are a loss-making company. Still, you have to pay wages. That you are paying it belatedly is a different matter. The answer is yes. You are liable to pay wages even during the COVID period. If otherwise, you are liable to pay in terms of the process of the DMAT Act or any decision. So, loss-making company or a sick company, NCLT company does not make any impact at all. Then seventh question is post-lockdown, how to provide work to the workman. Okay, legally, how to provide the workman is what you will do it in consultation with your production man, etc., etc. Legally, I can say now you can declare a lockout. I'm so sorry, layoff. Once now in rural areas, companies have been allowed to function with 50% workmen. Basically, therefore, 50% cannot be employed. Therefore, in respect of those persons, you can lay off, provided epidemic power is available in your standing orders. So you can staggeredly take employees. Till then, probably you can lay off, subject to the powers available with you. Next question is, which is frequently asked, whether the management staff can be given lesser salary. Again, the answer is no. Whether he is a worker under the provisions of the labor enactment or a non-worker, the legal principle is one and the same. You cannot unilaterally reduce the wages of any employee at any level. Therefore, that the employee will have a difficulty in approaching the court is a different matter. But the answer is no. Now, the last question is more on fact than on law. When the essential service factory is functioning, how to deal with the absenting workmen? This situation may arise even after we start running the factory. This is a factual situation. Once you have been asked to run the factory and you, in spite of your communication, if the workmen do not turn up, you can treat them as absent. But that's different issues are how to communicate. Some of my clients said, sir, we are normally communicating by WhatsApp messages. I said, is the communication sufficient? He said, yes. They also replied, some people are applying leave by WhatsApp, etc. So we have sent a communication. Somehow reported or substantially reported, somehow not reported. What to do with them? The answer is very simple. If the workman is deliberately not reporting for work, you can treat him as an absentee and not pay wages. But whether he's deliberately not reporting for work or is genuinely not reporting for work is an entirely different question. For example, he's in a containment zone. In Chennai, there are about 147 till yesterday. I don't know what is the statistics today. Those people coming out will be very risky even for you. Or people are genuinely coming away far away places. For example, in Chennai, people are coming from Tiruvallur, Chengalpet, or etc. Or people are moving from Chennai to Sriperumbudur. There is no transportation. So you have to take a very corrective step or a genuine factual aspect and decide whether a person is entitled to wages or not, in spite of the factory being open. So this is what I want to share with you. I have dealt with the Disaster Management Act and its strength. I also dealt with the industrial law and what is the conflict between the parties and what is the scope of litigation prima facie, and in my view how this issue can be resolved. And I also answered about 9 questions. This is what I want to share with this elite and well informed audience. Thank you so much. If there are any further questions or doubts, I am ready to answer it.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful presentation
Yes.
of the position and analysis. Thank you very much. We have
Yes.
some of the members having questions from IT industry.
Hmm.
People for whom they are not able to
Okay.
not
Repeat the question again, please.
people for whom we are not able to give full time work from home in IT industry, how, how much we should be pay? For example, for a day we are able to provide only 3 hours of work, and we prefer to pay only half wages, the 50% of the wages for the day. One, what is the legal position? One. Number two, people who are not willing to work from home, citing different reasons. How do we manage that? That is one question from a member from
Uh,
our IT group. Yes.
okay, my answer is twofold. As far as the first issue is concerned, they are
Okay.
entitled for full wages. That you are
Okay.
unable to provide work, it does not matter. He is ready to work. He is ready with his
Okay.
labor, but you are not able
Okay.
to give work. Therefore, he is entitled for wages. The second aspect is a very factual
Okay.
aspect. You said he is not ready to report for work. During this period, I have come across cases. Uh, in IT industry, if you said you can say no work, no pay, no doubt. But certain workman of a pharmaceutical company, sales representative said, since you are not able to go to market and do the work, we will provide you training on software. Through that, you interact with your stockist, customers, doctors, etc. Most of them said, no, I don't have that tech-savvy knowledge, nor we have apparatus with us. Therefore, we can't do that. So that seems to be a reasonable explanation. But in IT industry, work is which he was already doing and is came and he is refusing to work from home. Actually, you will not earn his wages.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have one question, sir.
Yes.
As far as piece-rated contractor,
Yes.
because regular contract employees now we are making payment, whereas I want to more focus on piece-rated contractors. How we can make the payment to the piece-rated?
See, piece-rated workman is the law is even for payment of retention compensation, etc. The preceding 3 months average wage will be taken as the compensation package. So you can take preceding in respect of me, preceding 3 months, what is the wage, and you can average it. Similarly, you can apply to each workman, and that will be the average wage for month, based on which you can pay. Piece rated does not make any distinction because either piece rated or hourly rated, they all say the workman definition is one and the same.
Sir, another question in chat box, can offers be revoked because of financial situations?
What is that offer?
Offer,
employment offer.
Employment offers.
Employment. See, employment order, I have come across this question also. Employment offer does not fructify into an employer-employer relationship. You are offered, but he is yet to accept and report for work, though he is ready. In such a case, yes, you can reject that offer or you can withdraw the offer. That is well settled. Because of the prevailing situation, if you are not able to proceed with the offer, yes, you take the reverse case also. Even in spite of the offer letter, the employee can refuse to join because of some reasons. The same logic will apply in favor of the management also. I offered, but we are yet to report for work and enter into a contract. Therefore, the present situation, the offer is withdrawn and rejected. That should be legally permissible. Yes.
So another question, whether can we pay 70% of the wages for employee who's drawing 40,000 and above for only for the April month?
No, I said it's not legally permissible.
Sir, adding to Tilak's question, suppose if offer is made, if he accepted the offer, he has given the consent, and what is the remedy, sir?
Even
is
if,
it wise
even
on
if he
the management?
Yes, even he has accepted and he is consented, but as long as he has not reported for work, this is what I am critically saying, as long as he is not reported for work, you can withdraw that offer. But once he has stepped in and even worked for a day, the master and relationship takes place and there is no question of withdrawing the offer. Withdraw offer, consent, still it is not fructified. Then you can withdraw it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
We'll open up for further questions. If the participants have questions, you can ask.
Okay.
Hello, this is Raghuram.
Yes.
My question is, in the case of permitted companies, where they were advised to work with 50% or 30%.
Yes.
In such case, we are operating person. Suppose the shift duty, somebody cannot report being held up in the confinement area. Whether the employer has the right to, workman has the right to demand double wages. In such, if they are demanding, assuming the union or somebody demanding, what will be our stand? Shall we propose equal deduction from the fellow who has not attended the job?
See, I'll answer it two ways, one by one. The demand for overtime is absolutely not valid in law, because overtime arises in terms of the Factories Act only when he works beyond working hours, normal working hours. Similarly, the deduction being double also does not arise. So treat it as an absentee, no work, no pay principle will apply. That's all.
Sir, for the month of April, shall we pay the average of December 2019, January 2020 and February 2020 working days for the month of April wages, sir?
For regular workman.
For contract
No.
employees, sir.
Contract employees. No. There is no question of average salary. Last on salary, yes.
Okay, sir.
If
So-
he is a daily rated employee, for example, I'll explain. He is a
Yes, sir.
daily rated contract labor. Per day, you would get minimum wages divided by 2600 rupee minimum wages notification.
Yes, sir.
That is what you have to pay. I believe
Okay.
all the contract workmen are in receipt of only minimum wages. So
Yes,
that
sir.
wages you have to pay.
So that is
Then-
for 26 days we have to pay the
Yes,
salary
yes,
for the month of April.
yes.
Okay, sir.
Even assuming the earlier month he absented, etc., but still
Okay.
this month notionally you have to pay this money.
Okay, sir.
Sir, what stand we can take it for the gratuity and bonus purposes, this lockdown period?
See, gratuity is concerned, section 2 capital is very clear. Continuous employment is sufficient. They need not actually work. Significant amendment has been made a decade ago. So gratuity, this period should be counted definitely. As far as bonus is concerned, no, because they have not worked. It is a notional wages you have paid. Probably this salary paid during the COVID may not be eligible for bonus calculation.
Sir,
Yeah.
for the lockdown period payment, if at all with the consent of the workman, if we compensate within the future period, how long we can get the compensation? In other way, I can say per day 2 to 3 hours.
But that's what I suggested.
Yes.
You can do it, but ensure that it is in terms of the Factories Act. You cannot have an individual decision. Probably you have to have a MOU with the trade union, or if there is any works committee, you have to enter into a settlement, etc. And you should give the staggered working days. There also a question may arise. Probably you are asking me to report for work today, extra 2 hours, or etc. But due to valid reasons, I am unable to work. You cannot say no work, no pay, unless it is adamant attitude. So you should enter into such a agreement or MOU, which gives a flexibility to management to require the workman to report for work or do extra hours without any further salary, because he has already drawn salary. It should be so drafted and correctly drafted so that there is no extra payment. And if he fails to work during that period will be treated as an absentee and he will not get his wages unless it is not for genuine reasons.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry to ask only one question from me. Another.
Sure.
See, actually, is there any relaxation in case of seasonal industry, sir?
No. That makes no distinction.
Suppose if you say the seasonal industries employ workman full or manpower only at the time of peak hours, the rest of the days it will be only minimal employment. So is that mandatory? Suppose assuming a company employs peak hours around 500 employees and remaining continuous operations will be around 20 to 30 employees. Is it mandatory to pay entire 500 or the regular contract? All are contract only. Is a regular contract work to be paid?
See, to my recollection, though I am not fully prepared with that answer, my recollection is as far as seasonal industry is concerned, the workmen are regular workmen are entitled wages all the 365 days. As far as seasonal workmen are concerned, they are entitled for wages only when there is a, for example, sugar crushing season, etc. For the remaining period, they are not entitled for wages. This COVID has not made any difference, is what I am going to say.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My name is Tulasi Velu and I am from the education sector. What I'm just saying is that the management has a thought process that in the future they may go for a pay cut. So, I mean, we do not know whether they're going for 10% or 20% or whatever increments they have already given, whether they will be providing, or they may they may reduce that, or they may even go for some other cuts. So, in what way the law is going to support us?
See,
That is my question.
cutting wages, reducing the existing wages is out of question, legally not permissible.
Okay.
You can refuse to pay the increment unless it is an automatic increment in government sector or a private sector. Even that you can probably postpone. But from what you say, if increment is based on performance and finance of the education institution, they can refuse to give the increment when it is due. Yes. That will arise even in a normal situation when the education institutions by now, as it is, are not doing well, irrespective of this COVID period. Even earlier, there was a decline in the intake of strength of students, and they have been reducing the margins. So they may have to not reduce the wages, they can refuse to give increment, or newly recruited staff and teaching staff and non-teaching them, they can fix a different salary at a lesser rate, permissible. But wage cut is out of question in any employment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, followed to that above question, with the employee concern, can we do that wage cut, sir? Because the companies are very keen on that.
See, that's what I said. Kindly read section 23 of the Payment of Wages Act. It says contracting workman is barred. Contracting means even if you cannot enter into a contract for reduction of wages. No doubt that law applies to workmen whose wages are 24 and less. But the principle will be the same. If you reduce the wages of workmen whose salary is say 50,000 rupees for any reason, you will, instead of going to the payment authority, you will go to the labor court. If a person is not a workman, irrespective of the salary, instead of going to the payment authority or labor court, you will go to civil court. It may take more time to resolve that issue, but the principle remains the same.
So there are some questions which have been posted in the chat box. I'll probably pull out a couple of them.
Yes, tell me, no doubt. I'm ready.
One question is, a few businesses have publicly announced salary cuts during this pandemic. What would be the legal repercussion for them? Something.
See, the legal replication is the employees are entitled to claim it back. I know generally this is wage cut is done in the industry across Tamil Nadu in respect of managerial staff. Under the hope that they will not litigate. But legally, no, it's not correct.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, what is the best acceptable practice for payment to essential category of workmen like security and other employees who did not work during this lockdown time?
See, the contract workmen are on par with the regular workmen as far as the salary is concerned. But I'll make a small distinction here in respect of contract workmen. Probably that should be one more question hereafter. If you are registered as a principal employer under the provisions of the Contract Labour Act, definitely your registration certificate will show the list of contractors, either with 20 or less than 20, etc. So 20 and above, they will have to take a license. Less than that, no. So in respect of the list of contractors, the workmen who report for work or not report for work, you are liable to pay salary, etc. But in respect of a service provider, very importantly, a service provider who is not a contractor in terms of the act and who is not shown in your registration certificate, nor he has taken out a license in spite of engaging more than 20%, the question of payment of wages to them does not arise. I'll explain immediately. For example, a transport contractor. You don't pay transport contractor based on any mandates or number of persons employed, but you pay by mileage. So 1 kilometer per day, this is how you will pay. That payment will include, no doubt, the driver's salary, fuel, maintenance, breakdown, profit, etc., etc. So such people, if you are definitely not engaged, then you are not liable to pay any contract amount or agreement amount, because such contracts are called principal to principal contract or agreement, or annual maintenance agreements. They don't do the job. Such commercially worded, carefully worded contracts, those concerned employees are not entitled for wages. Otherwise, a contract laborer, whoever comes inside the factory premises, his contractor has to pay, definitely. If he does not pay, Section 25 will operate. In respect of service providers, no doubt the service provider has to pay wages to his workman. He is the boss. But Section 25 will not apply there. So that we have to see the contract. If it is a principal to principal, then this situation under 21 will not arise.